Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley. Today we'll be discussing all the classics I've read in 2021. Now, at the beginning of the year, I sat down and created a list of all the classics I wanted to read in 2021. And I said that it was a TBR and that I was going to do whatever the heck I wanted, and I wasn't going to follow this list super well. And I sure did that. Let's go through our list, shall we? Okay, so on the list we have Robinson Crusoe. I did read that one. Edgar Allan Poe. I did read one of those stories, but I don't think that counts. The Woman in White.
Nope.
1984.
Nope.
The Epic of Gilgamesh.
Nope.
Oliver Twist, purely by accident. Only because there's the Dickens versus Tolstoy debates going on back and forth between Emma and Carolyn Marie Reeds. So if they hadn't been doing that, Oliver Twist would not have been on this list. Pictures of Dorian Gray.
Nope.
Fahrenheit 451.
Nope.
Les Miserables.
Nope.
So 2 out of 9. I mean, that's like a solid F. If we're gonna go based on those rules. So let's talk about the books I actually read. Okay, so depending on how the rest of this month goes, I will potentially have finished 12 classics this year, which I think is the actual original layout of the challenge, is to read a classic every month. It wasn't a classic every month, by the way. It was just as I felt like it. But it ended up being about 12. Possibly if I finish A Christmas Carol before the end of the year, which I would be shocked if I didn't. So at the beginning of the year, I started it off with Twelfth Night because they had a college class that you could audit to study Twelfth Night. So I actually read this twice, so I'm going to count it twice times because I read Shakespeare twice. Once because I was like, I don't know what this is, but I don't know what's going on here. And the second time because I was like, oh, I do know what's going on here, and now I can enjoy it. That was a lovely experience. I would give this play, 4.5 stars. I still think about this play. I read this in January, and I am still thinking about it and its effects almost an entire year later. I loved the themes of bullying, the laughter around falling in love super fast, the obnoxiousness of that. I loved Viola's journey to find herself and to be her trying to figure out how to deal with her grief and just to become a human again. I don't know, there's just so much about this story that I love and adore, and I 100% will read this again anytime somebody's offering, like if any theaters around me are doing this, I'm gonna go see it because I just love this story. So I started off the year really strong, really killing it. Read it twice. The next one is Persuasion. I read this because Darling Desi was holding Austen, affectionately Austen book club, and then she never, I joined right as she stopped doing it. So she did 3, and then she didn't pick it up after that. So Persuasion, I read it, and then I listened to the audiobooks. I read this one twice, so I'm counting it twice. I was a little underwhelmed by this story. I thought it was sweet, and it was definitely Jane Austen, and I know this was her last novel, so there's definitely a lot more moving inner dialogue than there was in any of the other novels. But I don't know, because I watched the movie for this one, and I didn't like the adaptation that I watched. I watched the BBC adaptation. I think it's hard to make this as a movie because most of what the action is happening is inside of the main character. It's all of her thoughts and her feelings about what's happening to her. This story, again, this is not a new story. And so on some level, it was easy to see where it was going, but it was interesting to watch the characters get there. In terms of a romance, I don't know. I definitely would read this again, but I wouldn't go into it all excited like I would Sense and Sensibility. But again, I've only read this twice, and it was back to back. So I read it, and then I immediately started listening to it again because I wanted to make sure that I'd understood the narrative. I started off this year. There was a phase there last November to the beginning of February where I was like, I'm going to read the book and then I'm going to listen to it to make sure I'm not missing anything. So I was really hefty and strong at that. And then I got to Robinson Crusoe and I was like, no, I want nothing to do with this book. I do not want to listen to it. I barely want to read it. And that just stopped. Killed everything. So I would read Persuasion again. I thought there were a lot of really good pieces there. I know a lot of people really love this novel, and Emma, and both of those I'm just like, eh. But I've only read Emma once, and I was out of practice when I read it. I read it in the middle of a college semester and just so that I could say that I had read it and that I was done with it, and I didn't really give it that great of a chance. I've since watched some adaptations of it that I really loved, and Audible did a live action Emma that I really loved listening to, that I own, but I want to be able to love the actual piece. Anyway, we're getting distracted. We're not talking about books that we want to read. We're talking about books that we did read, which was Persuasion. I'll give this a 3.5 stars. And I'm sure that rating will change the more comfortable, more familiar I get with this. I've noticed definitely with classics that the more times I read it, the greater that rating goes. Which might happen with Robinson Crusoe, the next book that I read in March. But I will never read this again. I give this a 1.5 stars. I can't even explain why I dreaded and hated this so much. I found it super boring. And I feel bad because I know so many writers, especially classic literature writers, this was one of the books that inspired them. There's so many authors that love this novel and got their start reading this, and it's not me. I think I listened to like maybe 2 chapters on audiobook, and I just despised everything about this experience. I don't know. It didn't capture me. Also, the writing was much harder than I was expecting it to be. And I think that was one part of the reason why it was so slow, because after I finished Shakespeare, then I picked it up and I got through it a lot faster. But again, I didn't love this. Hence the 1.5 stars. So I'm not going to read it again. I would maybe watch a movie adaptation, but there aren't any newer remakes of this movie, and I don't really want to watch an old one right now. At some point I'll be in the mood to watch old-timey action movies, but now is not that time. I would rather watch Swiss Family Robinson. That seems more interesting to me, but that's probably because there are lots of people on the island. It's not just one dude all by himself until he dehumanizes the native population. So next, moving on, The Secret Garden by the author's name here. I can't remember the name. Frances Hodge? That's my best guess off the top of my head. I give this a 4.5 stars. This is like the perfect children's novel. I wish I'd read this as a kid. I haven't watched a movie adaptation. I just realized that thinking about that now. Shame on me. I loved this. I loved the magic that is clearly there for the kids, and that as an adult you're just like, oh, I remember feeling that and feeling the magic. Both of the main characters, you don't like them in a very likable way. Yeah, this is just an adorable book. I enjoyed reading it. I would definitely read it again. I can't wait to read it to my daughter when she's a little bit older. Yeah, I loved this. I was not expecting to read this. I picked this up on a whim. Absolutely adored it. I need to read more of her stuff because she's got one more, A Little Princess, that I tried to read when I was a kid, and I was like, man, this is boring. Because I didn't know what real literature. No, just kidding. It probably is pretty boring to a kid. I think having someone read it to you would make it more interesting, to help explain some of the things. But it was just sweet. It was a sweet, fun time. All right, the next book is Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I give this 5 stars, 4.5, 5 stars. How many times have I read Sense and Sensibility now? 6, 7 times? I don't know, I've lost count. This was the first Jane Austen novel I ever read in high school, and fun fact, I despised it the first time around. I was like, we have this random chick chasing after rainbows, breaking her ankle, we have this other chick who's not in love, and then all of a sudden is in love, and like, I missed all of the subtext and the social cues because I was young and dumb. And now it's one of my favorite novels of all time. I absolutely adore Sense and Sensibility. And I enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed listening to it. I enjoyed revisiting this story again. Yeah, I have a video on it if you want to check that out. Okay, next we have Oliver Twist. Again, like I said, I picked this up for the Dickens versus Tolstoy debates. I was so underwhelmed by this novel. And part of that is, I think there are several things at play here. I will read Oliver Twist again. but it's probably going to be a while. But I was not used to not Oliver Twist writing, Charles Dickens writing. Also, this is his first novel, so we're watching, like, I'm reading his novels in order, so I'm watching him grow as a writer and a narrator. He's getting better. Every novel is significantly better. So that in and of itself is really interesting to watch. But in terms of the plot, Oliver himself has zero growth and zero progression. And the fact that he doesn't change is what is his quality. There's nothing else that happens to him other than that he gets taken advantage of by some really terrible people. So the villains of this story are actually very interesting. And it's interesting because in terms of Oliver Twist in popular culture, most people talk more about the villains than they ever do about Oliver Twist. So I haven't watched a movie adaptation of this. That might make me like this story more. I don't know. I give it a 2.5, 3 stars. I didn't hate it, but I sure didn't love it. The next book I read was Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. We're going to give this 5 stars. I loved this novel. I can't believe this is Tolstoy's second novel. I mean, I've heard it all goes downhill after that. So I guess we'll find out for myself. But I adored this. There are so many things about Anna and her situation, and just the way Tolstoy writes about women and the terrible situations that they find themselves in, that brings awareness that I just loved. There were so many moving pieces about this that I loved. I loved Anna and the portrayal of depression that she goes through. I thought that was very poignant, very realistic. This is the second time I've read Anna Karenina, and I didn't like it the first time, and I loved it the second time, which probably means I just need to read classics more than once, because I just don't get it the first time around, and I think that's probably normal and natural. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, next we have Frankenstein, 5 stars. I adored this book. I loved it when I first read it when I was 14. I don't remember why I liked it when I was 14, but now that I've read it again, I love this. Would I read this every year? Probably. I could very easily see myself reading Frankenstein every October and then A Christmas Carol every December. That sounds nice and cozy to me. Anyway, Frankenstein. I love this novel. This is a love it or hate it kind of novel, depending on whether you think the main narration is witty and clever or really whiny and stupid. I think it's both, and therefore I find it to be hysterical. And I love everything that this book talks about. The humanity aspect, how we view people, how we treat people. It's one of the most perfect novels that I've ever read. Okay, the last classic that I have recently finished is Nickleby, again by Charles Dickens. I would give this a 3 stars. This one is definitely, in terms of plot, much more interesting than Oliver Twist. It started off really good. The middle part was really boring and really long, and then it ended. The ending was okay. I didn't mind the ending, but I felt like there were like 300 pages in the middle that could have been completely removed, and would have been totally fine. I'd say it's fairly average. Like, it doesn't stand out to me. I would read it again. I definitely want to watch a movie adaptation. Yeah. I probably would like it a lot more the second time around, simply because I know where the plot is going. Hello there. Future Ashley popping in to say, I did indeed finish A Christmas Carol before the end of the year. That's 12 books, 12 classics in the year 2021. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, you're welcome. No one cares. Okay, so this book, I give it 5 out of 5 stars. I deeply enjoyed reading a Christmas novel at Christmas time. I'm a mood reader. This was very satisfying to me. This definitely left a couple questions in the sense that Scrooge just gets off scot-free for his actions. We're left with this very happy-go-lucky great tale. But he doesn't pay for any of the consequences of his actions. So it's kind of, I'm a little conflicted, but I still give this a 5 out of 5 stars. I'm very familiar with this story, made it super easy to read. Will I read this every year at Christmas time? Maybe not every year, but definitely many, many years to come. I will read this novel again and again and again. Maybe not even at Christmas time. I might just need a little bit of Christmas spirit, let's say in July and in June. Who knows? Okay, so that's it for that. On to my thoughts concerning classics and how that went for the rest of the year. Back to you, past self. Okay, so then another really important question to ask ourselves meaning me, myself, and I, about my reading of classics this year is how stressful did I make this for myself? Because I wanted this to be super enjoyable, because that was one of the things that I said in my video last year, which you can check out here, was that I wanted this to be enjoyable. I didn't want to do this based on numbers or percentages or anything of that like. So I would say if I had to grade myself, I would give myself a solid C for effort. There were definitely a lot of moments that I was reading classics because I wanted to finish it for a live show and be part of the participation for watching it on YouTube somewhere and being part of a community watching it, which I don't think is a bad thing. And I'm glad that we have all these opportunities to be able to talk to each other online, because there are not a lot of people in my life that are gonna be like, hey, did you read that classic? Can we talk about it and discuss it? I don't think I made it as enjoyable of a process as I would have liked. But again, I'm still learning how to do that, and so I don't think, like, I really tried. There were a lot of moments when I was reading a classic and I was like, this is not what I want to be reading right now. I want to be reading something else. So I put it down and I would read the thing that I really wanted to read, which is huge for me because it's one of the things we're working on, is doing things that I love, because I'm a very type A personality, trying to relax, trying to calm down. It's okay. It's okay to enjoy life and enjoy the things that you love doing. I mean, I put together a really great list for the beginning of this year, and a lot of these books are probably going to show up on my list for next year. And they'll just be on the list, and then we'll just have like a continuing rolling list that's just going to be forever long of classics that I say I want to read and then don't get to because I get distracted by the classic that's currently in front of me. I own probably 150 classics, and I've read maybe 20 of them, and that's definitely something that moving forward I want to address and change a lot. I want to be able to say that I've read all of the classics that I own. So I guess another question to ask is, did any of these classics change me as a person? Because that's also one of my goals, is that as I'm reading these, they changed me. Because it's a classic for a reason. I feel like, with the exception of Robinson Crusoe, we're just going to toss that one to the side, which I think is fine, because it's not a classic to me and it might be a classic to you, and that's fair. But in terms of the books that I did read, I would definitely say the ones that impacted me and changed me the most were Twelfth Night by Shakespeare, and bullying and the concept of being fair and not persecuting people just because they're different. 100%. That comes up in my brain all the time. And then Karenina, I think about that one all the time. And Sense and Sensibility. Those three books I feel like did really impact me and change me. Everything else was just interesting to read. And I think the way I've been reading it too probably impacted that. I want to get back into annotating and writing up my thoughts about the book, because that always solidifies the book way more for me if I make a video about it, or if I write an essay on it or something of that nature. So I think moving back to that would probably help it figure out how much it's impacting me, because there was definitely several novels that I was like, oh, I kind of like this, and then moving on. Oh, I totally forgot Frankenstein impacted and changed me. Yeah, definitely that. Yes, totally forgot my favorite book in my list this year. Anyway, okay, we're gonna wrap up. Soon to be coming, my classics for 2022. That will be a very similar list. We'll have a good laugh this time next year when I'm looking back on all the books that I meant to read in 2022 that seemed like a real good idea now. It always seems like a good idea in the moment, right? Always. Okay, that's all I have. I will talk with you all in the comments down below and in another video. Bye!